Welcome to Judge for Yourself. We've invited 4 political parties to discuss the very controversial and emotive issue of land reform. Shortly after 1994, government set a target of transferring 30% of all agricultural land to Africans. Only about 2.5 million hectares of private land has been transferred. That's 10%, as one understands, of the original goal. To speed up land reform, government now suggested that it will scrap the willing buyer, willing seller principle. Of course, this debate takes place within the context of the debates we've been conducting prior to the election, and land reform and property are central to our constitutional dispensation. There was a very delicately negotiated clause dealing with property rights. And of course, our constitution is a transformative one at the same time. It wishes to redress the legacy of apartheid, in which land removals and people being pushed off the land and black people being denied access to land was central to so much of our history. That's why this debate is so important. If you'd like to join the debate on Twitter, please use the hashtag #JFYLandReform. To discuss this with me this evening, we're joined by Gugile Nkwinti, who's the Minister of Land Reform and an ANC NEC member, Pieter Groenewald, Member of Parliament for the Freedom Plus, Athol Trollip, DA leader in the Eastern Cape, and Andile Mngxitama, Commissar for Land and Agrarian Reform for the EF. The way we're going to deal with this is each of the participants will have 90 seconds to tell you, the listeners, as to what their manifesto is. Perhaps I'll start with you, Mr. Groenewald.
Well, firstly, the Freedom Front Plus is quite clearly in its manifesto when it comes to land reform. We say that we are opposed to the fact that they want to open land claims again. We say that is not good for property in South Africa. It's not good for the farmers in South Africa. It is going to create a lot of uncertainty. Further, we also say that the present land who has been redistributed must first be successfully used. I mean, the minister himself admit that 90% of those projects are failures. So first correct the failures before you want to give more land. We also say that it is actually unacceptable to say that you have a land reform, a target of 30%, but there's no land audit. No proper land audit to say how many of the land is belonging to whites or blacks. So how can you set targets? So it is becoming, as you said, an emotive issue, very emotional, and therefore we say we think that it is misused for political propaganda to evoke emotions by people creating expectations which they know they will not be able to fulfill. And therefore we say also that we believe in the principle of willing buyer, willing seller. Then you can have more successful land reform.
Thank you for keeping your time. Minister.
Thank you. When we talk about land reform, we refer to 4 things: restitution, redistribution of land, land tenure reform, and development. Now, the question now is, what are we doing next? We are actually continuing with this work and improving on it. Amongst other things, in terms of restitution, we are reopening land claims for 5 years. Secondly, we are also looking at exceptions to the 1913 Natives Land Act to accommodate the San and the Khoi and the San, as well as take into account heritage sites, historical landmarks. This is a very important aspect of restitution. Insofar as redistribution is concerned, we want to up the pace. We have, over the last 20 years, we've redistributed 46% just over the last 5 years of the total land quantity that has been distributed. So we will increase on that. So, and lastly, let me correct this thing. You know, in 2009, when we came in, we looked at that 90% of land, which was lying fallow, not used, not productive, because there was no program at the time. We introduced a program, recapitalization and development program. By now, we've got more than 2,000 farms that were transferred through redistribution that are under full production. So it's no longer that 90%. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Trollip.
Dennis, first of all, the Democratic Alliance acknowledges that the legacy of the 1913 Native Land Act has got an enduring and lasting legacy of disadvantage for black South African people. We also acknowledge that wars of dispossession and occupation have been an historical phenomenon across the globe. These were not exclusive to European colonization. On the African continent itself, there were many wars of dispossession. So in that context, we also understand that the white commercial farmers that have been targeted by the ANC government to say that 30% of white-owned commercial land must be transferred, have been targeted as a group, an exclusive group. And we're saying that white South African farmers are not expatriates. They fought wars of occupation and dispossession in this country too. So white South African farmers believe that they have a right to farm, and we in the DA believe that so too do black African farmers. And they were dispossessed by the 1939 Land Act. And historians will show that black African farmers were competing productively with white commercial farmers at the turn of the last century. So what we say is that there's a fundamental difference between land reform programs of the Democratic Alliance and those of the ANC, because in reality the ANC is moving further and further away from transferring freehold title to beneficiaries of land reform. We as the DA say fundamentally that freehold land title must be given to all South Africans that live on land. Whether you are given an RDP house as a beneficiary for an RDP house, it must come with title. If you live in communal traditional areas, you must have title of the land that you live on. If you don't have title, the land remains unproductive, and Hernando de Soto talks about dead capital. We say there's too much dead capital in land in South Africa, and the state already owns 22% of all land in South Africa. They could meet the targets if they wanted to, but Dennis, 90% of beneficiaries chose to take cash in restitution rather than land.
All right, thank you.
Let's correct, Judge, the percentage. It is not 10%, it is about 7%. And let us also remember we're 20 years later. And so if we continue with this pace, it will take us up to 90 years to try to reach that 30% the ANC is promising. And we've looked quickly at the amount of money that has been used. About 50 billion rand has been expanded to buy back land. Now, EFF position is that land cannot be sold or bought back. This is stolen property. That's the first question. So in South Africa, there is no land reform program. 20 years later, you can have 7% of the land returned. At the same time, more than 1 million black people on farms have been evicted, and those who get this land have not been properly supported. So there is no land reform program on the table. What we have, rather, is an exchange of endowments. The ANC allows white people who have stolen our land to keep it, and when that land is redistributed, we must pay them. There is no moral, ethical, political, economic reason for us to buy back stolen property. In fact, the ANC, what is doing, it is promoting illegality. Everybody knows 1652, arrival of settlers, and all those wars were about dispossession. What rights do white people have to have this land, and we buy it from them? So if we expropriate land without compensation, which is the position of the EFF, we are going to expropriate land without compensation, distribute it amongst those who need it, black and white, and then provide support for those farmers. And it is important to remember, land, we're taking it not just for agricultural reasons, we take it because it belongs to black South Africans.
Thank you. You've also had your time. I've got to take a break, and we will be debating these comments as soon as I get back.
News that moves. ENCA.com.